This episode was co-produced with CONDA.ch, the leading Swiss equity crowd investing platform. You can start investing with as little as 100 Swiss francs in their campaigns. Check out their latest ones and invest at CONDA.ch. That's CONDA.ch.
Always run a pre-round where the company will offer to a closer community. They will choose who are the potential VIP investors and allow them to invest at certain preferential conditions. And then it opens up to the wider public. And when that happens, it never starts at zero.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. If you enjoy listening to our show, make sure to follow the podcast and leave a rating. And now, here's your host, Sylvan.
Linus, Pedro, a very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Pedro, you're the co-founder and CEO at KaEx, the world's first sports recovery drink to significantly reduce stress hormone. And you, on the other hand, Linus, you are the managing director at CONDA.ch, where you provide Swiss startups access to crowd investment capital. And of course, you want to know how the paths of your two crossed and why you're both sitting here. I want to start with you, Pedro. Your background is in pharma and you spent 4 years reading scientific papers and research to come up with the perfect workout recovery drink. Why did you decide to tackle this problem?
As some of your listeners might know, that obviously KaEx back in the days was developed for a different kind of, let's say, stress situation. Well, short disclaimer, we only finished a market research study, and today the vast majority use KaEx as post-workout recovery drink, as it is also promoted for, like in a worldwide, even from a professional perspective. But back in the days when I was still like on the verge of getting my master's degree in Pharmaceutical Sciences at ETH, obviously being a student, I also like to party from time to time. And people sometimes ask me, how this sports nutrition product, how can it be so far outside the box, because it's so different from anything else that is out there in sports recovery. And I mean, the reality is that I wasn't thinking of that box. I was thinking of a whole different box, which is obviously hangover recovery. Yeah. So at a trip I had with a couple of friends that we went to Cologne to see a football game the night before. Obviously, being students, we partied quite intensively. And I went into one of those huge drugstores they have in Germany to see if there is some kind of remedy to get just in shape back for the game. And I was really surprised that there wasn't anything. So browsing through this huge alleys with all kinds of products, asking even the personnel there. Nobody could help me besides of just painkillers and stuff like that. And obviously painkillers, they only numb the symptoms. They don't really help you with the recovery. And at that situation, I just did what I could do. Being a pharmaceutical student, I just grabbed a few no-brainers ingredients, I would call them, like electrolytes, vitamins. But back in Switzerland, I did exactly that, what you just introduced. I was so curious to learn, what's necessary to improve your recovery from your brain recovery, your muscles, your liver, your stomach, everything involved from this very stressful event, what alcohol consumption actually is. And after 4 years, reading through hundreds, if not thousands of clinical studies, I then had a first formulation that allowed me to then really engage in this, let's say, business endeavor.
Amazing. So you started out with your own problem, basically.
Yes, exactly. It wasn't really just out of self necessity, if you want. Yeah.
Usually a very good starting point to create a company around it.
Yeah.
Linus, your background is a bit different. Until 2019, you had one foot in the corporate world and one foot in entrepreneurship. What then made you go all in to the entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, in the corporate world, I mean, this was mainly financial services in the Zurich area. I was in banking for a few years. and gained some good experience. And as you mentioned, it was a bit mixed. In parallel, I was building with a friend I met through business, actually, at one of the banks when we were consulting there. We built a crowdfunding platform quite early. This must have been around 2010, something like this. And it was a social investment platform to actually promote social entrepreneurship. So I already have some background and some ideas in this space and see how it could work. Of course, technology back then was a bit more complicated, a bit more expensive than you would build it today. But, we did what we could with what we had, and we got this platform launched and some investments, and we're able to support quite a few good projects. So and I could see that, that's what really motivated me, but it didn't really, with that model we have, it didn't really pay the salary. Anything was not a model for us to earn any money. It was just to support good causes with a good model. So so then I was still in consulting banking for a few years, and ended up getting to know Christian, the co-founder of CONDA CH. And we started spinning a few ideas what we could do. And CONDA was not really the original idea. It was more to go into the startup space, see how we could, with our knowledge, with our background, support startups who wanted to grow, who wanted to take the next steps, by somehow filling the gaps of where they wanted to go. If that was financial knowledge or expanding into a new market that we happen to know, like Switzerland, for instance.
Right.
Or anything else that we thought that here we can contribute, and we can do that with a model where, we take a mix of, let's say, financial earnings and maybe skin in the game in terms of shares in some shape or another. We're quite flexible in how we do it. So that's where we're coming from. And then CONDA came in sort of through a different project. We have one client who wanted to build a platform for triple bottom line investments, so a little bit in the direction that I had done before, and he thought that we would be a good support for this. And we started building this and looking for different platforms how to base the technology. And CONDA also has a white label solution, so we're in contact with CONDA Austria, where it's originally coming from, and decided to go with this platform to start building this. And then this client, for personal reasons, had to stop the project. And then we started discussing with them and said, we've been looking to launch in Switzerland for many years, but we haven't found anyone suitable to do it. Would you guys be up for some sort of model joint venture where you could take CONDA into Switzerland? We started looking at it and said, now it's no longer 2010, it's 2020, I think, when we started discussing it. And there's a lot of crowdfunding, crowd investing around already. We don't think there's space in the market, really. And we started looking. CONDA in Austria and Germany is originally more lending focused, mainly for regulatory reasons. And we could see in Switzerland lending platforms, a lot of them around. Real estates, they come and go a bit. Some of them remain. And then you have a lot of these donation, more type of platforms, but not really a lot in the pure investment space where you can go in equity and actually become a shareholder of a company. Right. And we said, okay, there should be a market for that. Why isn't anyone doing that? And that's how we, basically came into the space of saying, that could be something we could try if we take CONDA Switzerland, modify it a little bit so that it works for the Swiss model and for the equity market. That could be an interesting idea, and that's how we started off.
Amazing. And with CONDA, you also worked with KaEx. So I want to talk a bit more about how you actually built the company to where you stand today, Pedro. You started out to cure sort of hangover symptoms, but now you are basically supporting recovery, mainly workout and sports areas. How did you decide to find the right focus on how to market your product? Was that really based on the usage that you saw out there happening with your product, or how do you decide to market KaEx?
Yeah, so we were fully opportunistic in that question of that department. We started in 2017 in October. We launched it as a purely kind of hangover remedy, if you want, in pharmacies, and we got some tractions from 15 pharmacies. It was then after a couple of weeks 200, and after a couple of weeks more 2,000 pharmacies. Later, even Coop launched us in 2018, so we were doing quite fine. And eventually we started getting these messages, these emails from athletes, with this very weird comments telling us, hey, you guys know how well that works also after working out. And obviously being a small company, we had to ignore those kind of messages because we have to be laser sharp focused. But eventually, even professional athletes started approaching us saying that they use the product, also at post-work recovery, and if there's anything to be considered doping-wise, like illegal substance abuse in professional sports. There isn't, but then that was really the point in time where we decided, okay, let's look into that from a scientific perspective. Is there any evidence, also clinical studies, not done on the alcohol case, but done on the sports case with the ingredients that KaEx contains? And I was quite overwhelmed to see how strongly it is supported from the scientific perspective also. In hindsight, actually, a fun fact, it's not that actually different from a bioprocess perspective if you drink too much alcohol or if you really work out really intensively. So there's, for instance, stress hormone that's elevated. KaEx contains phosphatidylserine to lower stress hormone. Even your muscles, when you drink too much alcohol, also get acidified, which obviously also happens when you work out. So all those ingredients in there have this dual purpose. And in 1 year just thinking about it, looking into the science, we then decided, okay, let's do it properly. Let's start collaborating with some, let's say, ambitious athletes within our circle to see what they think. That went really well. Eventually, we then even got to FC Zurich to test the product, which actually led to the fact that after the samples were used up, the players started complaining to the athletics department. No joke, they even told that to 20 minutes. And that's then when they started approaching us after Zurich and say, okay, we need the product. What can we do about it? And today, obviously, KaEx is used by several thousands pro athletes. I mean, all the big teams in Switzerland, from FC Zurich, FC Basel, IBE, two-door pro cycling team like Fabian Cancellara's cycling team. Even in Saudi Arabia, we have teams in the US. So the sports case really, I mean, for obvious reasons, people tend to do a lot more sports, luckily, than they tend to drink alcohol. And that's was then a no-brainer to see, okay, that's also consumer need out there. That's nobody's really fulfilling in a satisfactory manner. And that's the place that we need to be at.
So it was simply also just a much more attractive market by people drinking less and less alcohol and doing more and more sports.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And the magic comes together with the ingredients. So what are the ingredients of KaEx that give me this strong recovery effect?
Yeah, so after doing this 4 years kind of research, I had a first formulation together, which as an MVP, if you like, or prototype, it worked quite okay. But then there was a point in time that I really quit my day job. I was earning very well in the pharmaceutical industry, decided to give it all up and just put another full year into R&D. So, magic is really about the combination of the ingredients so that they the result is higher as the mere sum, obviously. There are some quite, let's say, exotic ingredients in there, like phosphatidylserine, which has shown in clinical studies to lower cortisol, which then was also replicated in a study done by the Swiss national football team on KaEx. There is amino acids in there that you don't see that often, like L-cysteine, L-tryptophan, that have very specific effects on the body. And then again, so the combination of this product as is something that you haven't seen before on the market.
And it's even so unique that you have a patent pending at the moment, right?
Yes. So the formulation as is, like the functions, it's not like only like a trademark of the recipe. It's really like a scientific patent. Is pending in some regions. In other regions, like Russia, for instance, they were a bit faster, and they already granted a patent. We also have now the new bottle out here, and also the push cap technology that's used is also a Swiss patent by one of our partners where we have an exclusive deal to work with. So it's, I would say, quite well protected.
A really beautifully designed Swiss product overall.
Thank you very much.
So Linus, now I'm curious, have you ever used KaEx yourself? And if so, in what occasions?
Yeah, quite a lot, actually. In winter, I go cross-country skiing a lot. Sometimes longer distances, sometimes even marathons. And then, this winter I did a ski tour across all of Lapland and Sweden. And then you're skiing, between 35 and 90 kilometers per day. Mm-hmm. and the next day you're doing it again. So I had enough of these packages with me to get one every day, and one for my friend as well who was skiing with me. He said, "You need this as well."
Perfect.
So in these kind of occasions, obviously it's great. I mean, it's even saving the chance to recover and to go the next day. And then now in summer I play tennis in an interclub team. And because it's more kind of regional amateur level, I mean, we're quite good at combining, let's say, the sports and the party parts. Well, maybe not party, but we have a few beers with the opponents after the game. You know, it's part of this.
Luckily, works for both, right?
Exactly. So, and even between the singles and the doubles, you know, usually it's a couple of hours. It's good to recover and then be fresh for the doubles match, and then you have a couple of beers, and well, the next day you have your sore muscles and your hangover and whatever. So yeah, it's obviously I'm a good user, a good use case for this type of product. So we were very happy when we got to know KaEx, both from a business, but also as a customer perspective. We got a few samples and I used up mine quite quickly. So.
Wonderful. And I wonder, is there a certain time when you should actually drink KaEx? Directly after a workout or just before you go to sleep, or what sort of the best practice there?
Yeah, so I mean, recovery starts almost immediately. If you go on a 10K run after 100 meters, your body's already taking care of recovery. Obviously, in that specific situation, it's still more concerned in getting the performance out there. But as soon as you stop performing, so to speak, then obviously recovering takes over. But that being said, if possible, actually the best time to use KaEx is during your workout. So if you work out in a gym, for instance, it's quite convenient. And if not, obviously, as quicker after working out, the better. So just right after working out. And for instance, Fabian Cancellara's Tudor Pro Cycling team, you really see them like on TV and on press photos when the riders just arrive at the finish line. They just get a KaEx handed to them.
Nice.
Because then again, obviously they also have to go several days on different stages. Yeah.
Directly, that's part of the process.
It's part of the process, yeah.
And I wonder, where does the name KaEx actually come from? Does it have any special meaning?
No, actually, it doesn't. So we, from the very beginning, like even before branding, we had this international scope, I would say. The patent, for instance, was filed globally. We really thought of something that works in English, in Latinic languages, and so on and so forth. Reading like through some market research, it said that four-letter names like Nike, for instance, or Coca from Coca-Cola work best, and that's how the name actually came together. Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah. And one thing I want to talk about, you briefly mentioned it before, is your distribution network. Basically, without any big marketing budget, you were available in so many pharmacies shortly after launch. Then also Coop and Migros followed. So how did you pull that off as a sort of a young, small company to be distributed across so many big channels?
Yeah. So I think there are two parts to it. Definitely the structure that you're coming with. If you're talking to bigger accounts, let's say Coop and Migros, they have very specific logistical requirements that you have to fulfill. So if you're super small, that's going to be difficult. What came in handy there definitely was a co-founder of mine, William, who joined with his distribution company. But that was actually only the second phase. The first phase was becoming traction within pharmacies. And there really it was me as a pharmaceutical scientist, actually at the very beginning, driving around Switzerland, talking to pharmacists, explaining what makes KaEx so special, then handing out and sending PDFs with the scientific documentation. And that really was what did the trick with KaEx. And we became distributed within all 2,500 pharmacies, I would say within 3 months after launching the product. Yeah.
That's super fast.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. But it also shows this, hey, I go and drive there myself. That's probably how you start out and how you have to make the first sales in that regard.
Definitely. I mean, coming again, I was working for 4 years at a well-paid pharma job back in the day, still wearing a suit and everything. So it took some I would say at the very beginning, it took some mind shift to really, okay, no, that's not your life anymore. Now you're at the lowest bottom of the food chain, if you want. Yeah. And obviously, I spent a lot of time on the field. Also, when we were launched at Manor, I spent hours and days there just as a promotion guy, handing out samples and brochures and stuff like that. Yeah.
You do everything that was there to be done, basically.
Definitely, yeah.
And then the big players came in, Coop and Migros. Usually they require quite a significant investment to take your product into their shelves. How did that come about? Did you also have to make a significant investment to make it work?
Yeah, I think this is something that also that needs to be kept in mind. I don't know any examples, to be honest, where that wasn't the case with a new product. So you really also talking to Coop and Migros, the investments also are like Werbenkostenzuschuss, like you have promotional activities that you have to book, quote unquote. And there you can be smart and just talk to them and see what makes most sense, because obviously they are also interested that the product works as well as possible.
Of course, the incentives are aligned, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And of course, you didn't pull this off all by your own. You also have a team of co-founders. There's Patricia, William, and David. How did the four of you meet?
Yeah. So within this year, when I just tested the MVPs and prototypes and got positive feedback. Obviously, those three people that Patricia is my sister, so my younger sister, William and Dave are good friends of mine. They also tested the product and they were super interested in just observing how everything evolves. And eventually, within this first year, I started reaching out to friends. One friend who is a patent attorney, asking them questions about patents. Another friend who is a financial expert, asking them questions about the financial planning. And eventually I approached William asking, well, you're now taking over the distribution, your family business. Mm-hmm. You have Coop, Migros as your clients. So what did I need to take care of? And he very soon said, well, I can explain to you, or I can show it to you if I can become a member of your team. That was the first one. My sister was working at a huge communication agency, international one. And obviously when it was about to creating a brand, I approached her. So can you show me what I need to consider? And there again, okay, I can do it for you. I can join as a co-founder. I want to be part of the game. And the same was with Dave, who at that point in time just opened his own e-marketing agency. And I approached him, well, I need a website. What do you think? And the same story there. Many other friends also wanted to join. At the other hand, I tried to get other people in that just were at a point in their careers where it didn't make sense. So, but that was very organically. Yeah.
And it also sounds like a very complementary set of skills, that every person that you just mentioned brought something different to the table that the company needed at that time. Yeah.
So I think there was to some degree by coincidence that they wanted to join, to the other degree not, because obviously I reached out to them because I didn't have that particular skill set. Mm-hmm. On the other side, I had also friends who asked me, can I please join you? People with a very similar backgrounds, maybe in pharma and so on. And I said, I thought it doesn't really make sense for me to have you aboard for now. Yeah,
absolutely. And we're sitting here together with Linus because you raised 2 times crowd investing through CONDA. So we also want to know a bit more about CONDA and what you guys actually do and how you work together. You mentioned before, CONDA was originally started in Austria and Germany, and then you guys basically brought it to Switzerland. And there you faced a difficult decision, right? You said, should we take an existing platform that's already technically viable and working, or should we build our own platform here in Switzerland? Why did you decide to go for CONDA and basically bring existing infrastructure to Switzerland instead of building it yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we had already, obviously, as I mentioned, through the previous projects, looked at different platforms, what they can do, what they cannot do, and so on. So we knew this one quite well already. We'd worked with it, even from, let's say, a back-end perspective or an admin perspective, where you're trying to set up the platform to work with a specific type of project and so on. So we figured that there was a way to set this platform up without too much modification to make it do actually what we needed to do for the Swiss market. And another reason was that they were, as a white label platform, not completely unknown in Switzerland. They had launched with Neon Bank already as a white label. You'd have to look carefully because it's white label to see that it was built on CONDA, but it became quite known as a successful crowd investing when they did their first round back in must have been 2021. So it was also not just the technology, but also let's say a brand and an approach which had already gained some foothold and some recognition in the Swiss market, which obviously helps you get off the ground as well. So for these reasons, it was, I would say, a quite clear decision. We had a good backing of their experience, of their technology, and of their branding, and that's a good way to get started off and to really hit the ground running. You know, so of course you can start building your own thing from scratch as well. I had done that in the past, and I know it's never as simple as you may think.
It sounds easy, but it's not.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you have a proven concept which you can modify to work the way you'd like it to work, and we have a good collaboration with them. We set up a joint venture where we have the majority and they have a minority, and then we have a franchise setup, and that's quite a good setup to really have a quick and successful launch, which we did have as well.
Great. Yeah. And I wonder, what are the requirements for startups to get a spot for crowd investing on CONDA?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we get a lot of requests from startups who would like to do crowd investing with us. And we try, for the sake of them, for the sake of our investors, and for the sake of ourselves, obviously, to select the ones where we think, well, they will run a successful campaign with us, and they will be a good investment case for investors, and they, as a startup, will benefit themselves from this type of financing compared to, let's say, choosing a different type of financing, right? So that's kind of how we try to go about it. Now, how do we define the criteria? Well, I can mention a few important ones. We'd like the company to have a certain maturity. If someone say, well, I'm still founding, I have this idea, it's probably a bit early to come and convince the crowd. You don't have your own crowd. We have quite a good community, but they're going to look at this and say, we have no idea if it's going to work or not. We don't know it. It's hard to judge whether this is a good idea.
Is there a certain revenue threshold that you're looking for, or a range that you say below that it doesn't really make sense?
Not a fixed one, but let's say if you have some traction, if you have some revenue, now it depends very much because we go across industries. So it's hard to say that, it really depends on the industry, what kind of revenue you'd be looking for. And we've even done cases where they are pre-revenue. Just by the nature of it, they're still quite well advanced as a company. Takes Swiss Blue Salmon as an example. They can only have revenue when they have built the whole factory and start actually fish farming. And that's a long way down the line, probably after Series B or something like this. But they needed to get a prototype in place. They already had some very good backing, funding in place, and they wanted to involve the crowd for this very good idea that they had, which was already well progressed, but it's still pre-revenue even today. So there are some exceptions. It's very hard to say it has to be this much or that much, but we do like to see some traction and some progress and a certain maturity of the company. Typically, they will be somewhere between, they will be after, the let's say the bootstrapping, the family fools and friends round, maybe even have some business angels on board, but too early to go with the VCs who might be looking for more like double digits million revenue figures. And there's a gap there in Switzerland in general, which we are trying to fill as well as we can. So that's one. And then you have things like, well, if you're, let's say, still an LLC and not a limited company, it's hard to take a bigger amount of shareholders on board. So that's probably one factor which you'd look at. And then, we look at a lot of other things that investors would look at as well at a company to see that it's a good case. But the ability to engage and make a community enthusiastic about what you're doing to the point that they will actually also be willing to invest, that's really what it gets down to in the end, right? So, and that should typically also involve to a certain extent, the own community of the company already. If they have not been able to make anyone enthusiastic about what they're doing, it's not likely to really sound well with a wider crowd who don't even know about them either. So these are things that we're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wonder, Pedro, how was the application process for you to get 2 times on CONDA, basically?
Yeah, so the first time it was in 2022. I think we were the third project on the platform.
Yes.
We obviously also got hold of the Neon white label thing, and we discussed it internally, and we didn't really find out how that really went. And then when you then went live, we just found out about it. So I actually reached out to Linus and Christian. And the process was, I think, quite straightforward. Obviously, they look over the most important documents, financial planning, data room, whatnot. And then I think we quite quickly we found out that this could be beneficial for the both of us.
So very straightforward, very easygoing.
Yeah.
And Linus, you have seen many campaigns by now, and I just wonder what makes or breaks a crowd investing campaign, because there's so much that can go right, but also go wrong. What are the best practices to have and launch a successful campaign?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we have a lot of best practices, and they get better with every campaign we do as well, obviously. And we invest a lot of time when we take a company on board and we decide that we're going to do this together. We invest a lot of time before you even see the campaign launching on CONDA. A lot of time and efforts have been invested to plan it, to set it up in a way that it has a good chance of success, but also to do, let's say, a marketing and campaigning plan together with the startup, where we have our part to play. They also have their part to play. And this needs to play together, like a nice band playing together. And that's how you get the dynamics of good campaigning, where you reach all or as many as possible of the potential investors. And then also, obviously, you have a conversion so that when you reach them, they are convinced to invest, right? And that takes a number of factors. It's anything from how you structure the deal, because, crowd investors are not stupid. They will look at what deal they're getting, what valuation they're getting, like any investor, right? And if you try to structure in a way that you say, okay, this all looks great, it's a great company, but it's, the valuation is crazy, not a lot of people will invest. So that's one part of it, just getting the mechanics right. But also getting the campaigning right. And we always do it in the, best practices way that we do. And I would say, if you look at the campaigns that we had, some will have been more successful than others. And it's a lot also down to how ready is the company themselves to actually run such a campaign. And that is one factor we try to look at before and to judge. But it all comes down to execution in the end. And it could happen that, now we had some vacation planned during when the campaign is around. We didn't think about that. And other factors that just really, not breaks it, but let's say it means they don't reach the full potential. So you really need to devote a lot of attention. Those who do it successfully, I mean, these are all busy founders. They are running their company. It's not like they don't have enough to do. And on top of this, you're going to run a funding campaign as well. But it takes a lot of engagement also of the founders, of the CEO of the company, and the founders out there. Those are the ones investors want to see. They don't just want to see your marketing manager or someone you delegated. So they also play an important role. But you have to show presence, and you have to show to investors that you want it. And that takes, every day during the campaign, that takes a significant amount of time. And if the founders are ready to devote this and to, let's say, go with us and follow our advice, it will typically be quite successful. In some cases, other priorities come in between, and that makes the campaign, let's say, a bit more sleepy, because you need this energy and this momentum to really get the most out of it.
This momentum, this is something that seems to be really important for any campaign. And I wonder, how do you develop it? Does it make sense that you do like a pre-launch and you already have a certain amount of funds committed, that you don't start at zero when you go live? Or how do you really develop this momentum?
Yeah, exactly. We always, with maybe a few exceptions, but in principle, always run a pre-round where the company will offer to a closer community. They will choose who are the potential VIP investors. and allow them to invest at certain preferential conditions, typically a little bit better price, but it can also be that they get some, I mean, every campaign has goodies in terms of premiums that you get if you take a certain threshold as an investor. And those can also be more attractive in the pre-round, or there will be some conditions for the early birds for a short period of time. It's typically maximum 2 weeks. So you have to kind of decide quickly and then go for it. And then it opens up to the wider public. And when that happens, it never starts at zero because the pre-round has already been running before that. So that's one way to gain the momentum. And then you need to hold that momentum through it. But if you start the pre-round well, typically word would spread. And you will get a good start to your public campaign as well. So it's a lot of the time it really goes together. If you create the momentum in the beginning and you manage to hold it, you'll continue for a certain amount of time to really get the most out of it.
Fantastic. Yeah. And Pedro, why did you actually decide to go for crowd investing in the first place? Because I assume with your distribution network, probably the revenue numbers, you could have also gone for traditional VC money or maybe even a loan from a bank. Why was crowd investing the right choice for you?
Yeah, so in 2022, at that point in time, we seen and we had a very diverse cap table, I would say, from obviously the friends, family, and fools to business angels to more professional business angels. At that point in time, even ProSiebenSat.1, 7 Ventures had invested. So we had VC institutional money. We also had a bank loan already open. We actually were on the verge of launching our new product, ready-to-drink bottle. And so we needed new, fresh capital. 2022, if you remember, that was when everything collapsed at once. COVID was still ongoing. Ukraine happened. And later on, the whole supply chain crisis. Very difficult for startups, in particular for consumer startups. So obviously, we needed to get creative to find capital. So that's how we then broadened our perspective in looking for help. But what then actually turned out, and that was mainly the reason why we then repeated the whole campaign a year later, was how well it worked as a tool for us, as a promotional tool. I mean, within our community, to get new, not only KaEx users, but KaEx super fans, who not only buy our product, but also promote it and or have effective skin in the game, which is in every kind of department is the best thing to have. And so what started maybe as a, let's say, out of necessity, then really became something that, overachieved all our expectations. Yeah.
Wow. So you really turned your consumers, your fans into co-owners.
Definitely. So it was both ways. So we, the consumers we had, I think, were incremental to get a campaign running. But at the same time, when you get this momentum, you have new people that just get wind of your product, and so we gained new customers also through CONDA. Definitely.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. That's a win-win for sure.
Definitely. Yeah.
And Linus, what happens when a campaign successfully ends? How do you then continue to work or manage the investors? Because suddenly you have many, many more investors that you now have to take care of and inform about the business, etc.
Yeah, and I think as Pedro mentioned, if you do it right, you have gained a strong community of fans, you could say, or ambassadors for your brand, who are not only investors, they're also typically customers. Mm-hmm. But they will also be very strong promoters of what you're doing. And we can see some companies are really using that well. So they use the investor relations, not just as investor relations, but also as a sort of marketing, I would even say. Mm-hmm. We can take another example, Anavon, who are doing quite specialized ski manufacturing in Graubünden. They will have the yearly investor skiing day where you get to try out the next models. You get to meet the managements of the company, Bruno Kernen, who's running it as a famous skier. And of course, this will mean people bring home skis and show it to their friends and are very enthusiastic about the product. And this is a lot of the time what you need as a growing startup, is to really get your brand going through word of mouth as well. Mm-hmm. So those who do it successfully, they do it this way, and then there are others who may choose to, let's say, just do the more dry type of basic investor relations. Yeah. and focus on that. So that's it's a bit different how they choose, but a lot are actually trying to use these benefits and to keep them also after the investment is done. And and then you have those obviously like KaEx who did a second round with us. Then it's also very important to keep your investors happy, because you'd like them to invest again and to do a bigger round the second time, which they successfully did. So there are a lot of factors to it, but it's really about keeping and using this community in the best way.
Sounds super valuable and very important to do.
And there's maybe one point to add to it, which probably is built into your question. Yeah, but how do you manage all of that? Maybe you were 3 people on the cap table before, and now you're 1,000. And there are technical solutions to that as well. Just as we are running everything online, there are other solutions as well. And we're working with one of them called Equitech, where you can manage all your shareholders in one place online as well. And even if you want to run the General Assembly, which is legally possible now since COVID in Switzerland, you could run that online as well. And you could do a lot of things to reduce the effort, the governance of having many investors on board, right? And then there are some who choose to go with the participation certificates for the investment, which is basically shares with one difference, is that it's non-voting shares. Yeah. And this makes it also a bit easier to handle when you have general assemblies and so on, where you're obliged to inform people, but you do not need to invite everyone to have a say if you don't want to.
You can give them a share in the potential economic upside, but you don't have the admin overhead, or you find a solution through different tools to manage that.
Yes.
Perfect. And of course, you are also here to make money yourself with CONDA.ch. So I wonder, what is your business model? How does the fee structure look like? How does that work?
Yeah, in essence, if the project, if the campaign, if the fundraising is successful, we earn as well. So we have a success fee. That's the main part. Then we have a smaller setup fee in the beginning, because as mentioned, we put a lot of work in the beginning. And for the case that someone should say, oh, you know what, I decided differently or whatever, at least the effort is covered. But we're not really earning money with that. It's more kind of to cover the effort. And in the end, we also have quite a lot of work to make sure that everything is structured. Everyone has paid. Everyone is identified.
Of course.
Everyone is correctly in the cap table and so on. So there is also a small fee at the end to cover that part of the work. But the main part is really, if the campaign is running well, we have a lot of skin in the game, in that we are also benefiting from that. So we want all the campaigns. We have, several reasons for wanting the campaigns to do well as well.
I also wonder, it makes sense, right? You want to put the same incentives in place, that the startup has a successful campaign and then you also get paid based on that success fee. Why do you make it based on the volume that you help them raise and not on the future success of the company? Is that due to regulations, or what is the thinking behind that, to not have more skin in the game?
It's a good question. I mean, there are models when you set up investment structures and you more charge the investors typically, and you might charge a carry and so on, for doing well, and you're kind of running an investment vehicle or a fund of some sort. Yeah. That's one model to do it. Our model in crowd investing is a different one. The investor is actually not paying. It's the startup paying for raising the money. And we've chosen that model because we think it works well. It attracts more investors. It makes it simpler for the crowd to invest with a small amount of money. It's not a VC fund in that way. Right. We might at some point, who knows, try and go in that direction as well. We've seen others in the market try and move a bit and say, okay, we do both. We launch a fund as well for those who kind of just want the portfolio and not have to choose the startups themselves. That might be a case for the future at some point when we build a bit more track record. But at the moment, we're choosing this model because it just works best for what we're doing in the market. And we do take an investment in the startups that we have with our other company, with our main company, Braingelist, Christian and me. We do take an investment as well. I mean, nice. we only launch or list companies that we believe in. So of course we do take an investment as well for us to have part of the future success, and also to kind of, still be part of the story and be involved in what's going on with the startups. So we do that as well, but the fee model is not in that sense based on their future success. It's more based on what we are actually helping them to do right now. I mean, it's not thanks to us if they're successful in the future, really.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah. So, Pedro, after everything that we talked about, I already feel bad that I missed 2 times the chance to invest. Will there be a third chance to invest through the crowd?
Yeah, well, that's funny because the second time around, we said, okay, that's it for now. We just want to offer a very last chance to, for investors, to consumers to get a piece of the pie. So that was a year ago. And then again, the first time around, we got around 200 investors. The second time around, it were like 500, so 700 in total. Yeah. And it's just incredible for us to see how valuable as a tool those investors, those consumers, that community is. And I'm not saying too much, but let's say I'm not that certain anymore that there's not going to be a third round, as I had communicated in the past. It's nothing planned, aligned for now. So, but let's see that. It's definitely something that needs to be considered when you're raising money.
And I assume that you will need more funds in the future because you're expanding to the United States right now, or that's like the big next milestone for you. Yeah. Why do you choose to go to the US directly instead of expanding more across Europe, where you already have some sort of a footprint, but you could still do more there as well?
Yeah, so there are different reasons. Obviously, the market is huge, but that's not only the only reason. Since we have a dietary supplement, there are regulations that need to be considered. And within Europe, although despite the EU and everything, you might have different regulations in every single country, which makes operations and supply chain super complicated. Obviously, also the market it's not fully like transparent throughout. So if you want to look at it from a commercial perspective, the US is the way to go. But most importantly is that these new studies that I only mentioned very briefly, that the Swiss national football team just concluded a study on KaEx testing a 36% decrease in cortisol, which is quite mind-blowing. There's no other product in the world that does that. This study is nice to have in Europe, but you cannot, due to regulatory reasons, use it in your promotion, while you can make full use of it in the US. Actually, it's even mandatory if you want to promote health claims in the US. So, and this is obviously the biggest USP that we have in a market that makes also sense from many different perspectives. And the last 2 years, we spent a lot of time, or me spending a lot of trips, also going to the US back and forth, also looking for strategic investors there. I was just 2 weeks ago, I was in New York at a event called Nutrition Capital Network. That's the corporate VC network of all the big companies in the food and beverage space, from Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Abbott, you name it. It was a huge honor to be one of 2 European startups to be there out of 18 candidates. So looking for strategic investors within the US to expand in the US for those regulatory and commercial reasons. Yeah.
Sounds super exciting.
Thanks.
Wow. Very, very cool. Linus, talking about raising funds, CONDA.ch is also currently raising its own crowd investment funds. How much money are you looking for?
Yeah, it's actually the first time that we're looking for external funding. We started out with basically just bootstrapped, and since then we live off the revenue we make. And we've seen the opportunity to, yes, we grow, but we grow organically. Mm-hmm. And we see a lot of growth opportunity in the market. We think that there are a lot more of good companies, or we know good companies out there, you know, as well, working with a lot of entrepreneurs who could and would benefit from doing crowd investing. And we'd like to reach them. We'd like to be able to onboard them. We'd like to grow and to do more campaigns. And we like to get there quicker. As entrepreneurs ourselves, we're also, I would say, impatient and want to reach and utilize this potential which is out there. So we decided to raise capital for ourselves to invest into this growth. Mm-hmm. We are looking for just 250K at the moment. So even by our own standards, it's a rather small campaign. But we think that we have this is what we can work with. We could go a bit higher if there's a lot of interest. We have some more ideas what we would do in that case, but we wouldn't go too high because we want to also use the money wisely and make sure there's a return on investment, that it's actually working for us and for the investor. We choose to do it on our own platform, and it's our own business. It's in our DNA. So for us, it was a quite clear decision. And we said, well, we're also a community-driven company in that way. We live through the investment community that we have. And what better way to allow them to engage further than to open up to them, first of all, to be part of our story as well.
And if anyone is now interested to learn more about this opportunity, where can they find more information?
Yeah, we actually have already announced our own campaign on CONDA CH, so on our website.
Very easy.
And we are currently preparing the pre-round, which is running now for until end of next week. And then we'll open up the wider one. So if anyone was really interested to get the preferential conditions and do a ticket there, we're happy to discuss.
Be quick.
Be rather quick and reach out to me. But otherwise, we'll open up to the public in a bit more than... it depends a little bit when this is broadcasted, obviously.
Next Monday already.
Next Monday is the
20th.
The 20th.
Yeah.
Okay, so it will be in 1 week from now. Will be the open round, cool. And right now will be the pre-round, which is running for a week then. Yeah,
amazing. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Linus and Pedro. It has been a pleasure to talk to you. All the best and lots of success for the future.
Right.
Thank you very much, Silvan. Great. Thanks.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.